But don't do that, because that's what went wrong last time, because that's what I was doing. When I was singing it, I was
but even now, without me,
I left Bolivia and came to London, where I hid in a toilet to escape from the police. Raising the lid, I could see Elizabeth's fat white behind, on which Sir Lyndon Johnson was projecting an Andy Warhol movie. I was fed up, but I was scared too. American spies were all over the place. As Lenin put it, what now? So to kill time, I picked up a political novel, opened it at random, and began to read. Page 12.
Yes, I stuck around St. Petersburg when I saw it was a time for a change. I killed the Tsar and his ministers. Anastasia cried in vain. Yes, I rode a tank, held a general's rank, when the blitzkrieg's all raged and the bodies stank. Pleased to meet y'all, I hope you guess my name. Ah, but what's so confusing is just the nature of my game. Yeah. Yes, I gotta tell you. I thought, Kate. Yeah. Gee whiz, gee this, Keith on the cans, he says.
I can't hear myself.
Well, Keith, I thought of having the solo on the third, on the fourth one instead of the, because that's the way it's the way it sort of is, you know. The last verse is different.
Okay.
So we'll have it like 3 verses straight through, and then the solo, whatever it is. Should start off very cool. Should be very cool.
Just you on your own, Bill. Hold on a minute, everybody. You turn the amp down.
Page 34. Nixon examined the bodies of Lieutenant Dubček and Commander Guevara. They were both breathing, but the incident was most unfortunate. It was worse than a crime, it was a blunder. To gain time, he hid the bodies. Bitterly, he regretted the fact that he wasn't wearing his Space Force Admiral's uniform, for it would certainly have made it easier for him to leave the Politburo compound unmolested. Of course, there was a risk that he might be shot on sight, so he had to find that bastard Tito before the balloon went up.
I want to move amps. I move to the small box. It's better sound.
You're on the box, the little box?
I want to go into there, yeah.
Page 219. Patakos knew that Marilyn and he had to leave the area at once. The roads were probably swarming with Trotskyites. He was in a tight spot. The peasants had seen the plane taking off. As soon as Colonel Ben Barker discovered the starfighter in the clearing, he would send out search parties to find the fugitive's hiding place. Patakos spent 3 full hours tampering with his and Marilyn's passports. Now he was a citizen of Biafra in his late 60s, and his profession was governor of the BBC. The golden blonde accompanying him was both his secretary and his nurse. The couple reached Da Nang airfield 15 minutes before flight. Page 79. "You're my kind of girl, Pepita," said Pope Paul as he lay down in the grass. "But I'm not in the habit of taking women by force." "Caballero," she answered, "you're a fool. Do you think I would have let you catch me if I did not like you?" Paul moved closer and slid his grubby fingers under the lovely Venezuelan's wet poncho. "I like you a lot," she whispered. "I'm crazy about you. I never said that to any man before. Do you hear me? You're the first one." Brutally, she kissed the so-called apostle of non-violence on the mouth. Outside, an owl screeched mournfully in the warm twilight. It was late when they got to the arsenal. Trujillo was furious. "If you want petrol, you'll have to wire Standard Oil." "Take it easy, Raphael," said Pope Paul. "Pepita and I have a lot to say to each other." "Anyway, it's dark enough now. We have to go," said Trujillo in a commanding voice. "Okay," grumbled Pope Paul, who still had one hand inside the ambassador's wife's panties. "We'll take the old Sherman. Pepita will show us a route that Camilo Torres' men don't know about." "No," screamed Trujillo. "No women. This is men's work."
Yes, I will.
What has been called blues was the result of more diverse sociological and musical influences than any other kind of American Negro music called blues. Musically, classic blues showed the Negro singer's appropriation of a great many elements of popular American music, notably the music associated with popular theater or vaudeville. The instrumental music that accompanied classic blues also reflected this development, as it did the Negro musicians' maturing awareness of the more instrumental style, possibly as a foil to be used with this naturally vocal style. Classic blues appeared in America at about the same time as ragtime, the most instrumental or non-vocal music to issue from Negro inspiration. Ragtime is also a music that's closely...
Page 1012. Well, to go finally asked. Well, what, stammered Cressida? Where's the go? I wouldn't say a word in front of that idiot Wilson, the informer. So what, screamed the go, his face contorted with rage. You're getting paid, aren't you?
You have to completely exterminate the red man. And he did it. And he did it.
Page 87.
And he did it.
How did you manage to spread the virus on a worldwide scale after you were indelicate? I discovered a mold which would act as a carrier, Suslov declared. A mold I once experimented with in Los Angeles. It feeds on a common Yankee substance called drive-in, a mixture of motion pictures and automobiles. Drive-ins were set up everywhere. The spores will be carried on the west wind and settle wherever there are men and women. Not a single red will survive.
He went to Africa. Our ancestors said, Dig baby, this is our way of life. Dig baby, this is our way of life. We beat drums, we enjoy ourselves. We beat drums, we enjoy ourselves. We have gold, we make diamonds and stuff for our women. He took the gold. He made us slaves. But today he runs Africa. The Chinese showed him everything they had.
Page 109. You're out of your mind, darling, said Princess Grace. I may have won a prize in a shooting contest, but I can never make a shot like that. There's a mirror on the dressing table, shouted Salazar. Grab it with your feet and use it to aim. I'll take the risk.
I hate the black bitch. You can't trust them like white women. And if you try to, they won't appreciate it. They won't know how to act. It would be like trying to pamper a cobra.
Page 287. If you don't marry Khrushchev, you'll never be the wife of a great corn-eater. I don't understand a word you're saying. I know, but I love you, Barbarella. And that's why I want to play fair and square with you, whispered Roosevelt.
Take me, for instance. I love white women and hate black women. It's just in me so deep that I don't even try to get it out of me anymore. I jump over 10 nigger bitches just to get one white woman. Just a minute. Get down. It's no such thing as an ugly white woman.
The Chinese showed him everything they had. They showed him gunpowder.
Hey, yo!
They said we use this fireworks for anniversaries, for festivities.
The white woman is beautiful, even if she's bald-headed. Hey, just a minute. And only has one tooth. It's not just the fact that she's a woman that I love. I love her skin. Her soft, smooth, white skin. I'd like just to lick her skin as if fresh honey flows from her pores. And just to touch her long, soft, silky hair. There's a softness about a white woman. Something delicate and soft inside her. But a nigger bitch seems to be full of steel, granite hard and resisting. Not soft and submissive like a white woman. Ain't nothing more beautiful than a white woman's hair being blown by the wind. The white woman is more than a woman to me. She's like a goddess, a symbol. My love for her is religious and beyond fulfillment. I worship her. I love the white woman's dirty drawers. Sometimes I think the way I feel about a white woman, I must have inherited it from my father, and his father, and his father's father. as far back as you can go into slavery. I must have inherited it from all those black men, part of my desire, because I have more love for her than one man should have. Yes, I want all the white women they wanted and never been able to get. They must have passed on their desire to me. They must have. Desire for the white woman is like cancer eating my heart out and devouring my brain. In my dreams, I see white women jumping over fences like dainty little lambs. And every time one of them jump over, her hair catches the breeze that sways out behind her like a main Panamanian stallion. Blondes, redheads, brunettes, strawberry blondes, dirty blondes, drugstore blondes, platinum blondes, all of them. They're all things in my nightmare. All the sacrifice do I make it up, not that. I know that the white man made the black women the symbol of slavery, and the white women the symbol of freedom.
Page 91. Now, don't get all worked up over nothing. This isn't the first time some fool has passed himself off as Peter O'Toole or Franco.
The cool jazz was a white degenerative form of bebop. And when mainland America was vaguely hip, the TV people, wizard of all total communications, began to use it to make people buy cigarettes and deodorant, or put life into effeminate digs by detectives. Then the white boys slid into all the studio gigs, playing their music for sure. So-called pop, which is a certified version of rock and roll, just as the Detroit Motown sound is a slick certified version of older R&B gospel influenced forms. Not only the Beatles, but any group of middle-class white boys who need a haircut and male hormones can be a pop group. That's what pop means, which is exactly what cool was, and even clearer, exactly what Dixieland was, complete with funny hearts and funny names. White boys, in lieu of the initial passion, will always make it about funny hearts, which be their constant minstrel need, the derogation of the real, come out again. Stealing music, stealing energy, lives, with their own consents and lives finally, making it white music. From any place, anytime too. We all live in a yellow submarine with all their fiends, the English language, the exclusive white. Exclusive meaning isolated from the rest of humanity. In the yellow submarine, people shoot English weapons.
We have never spoken English perfectly. Never have we spoken English perfectly. Never, never, never.
That is because our people consciously resisted a language that does not belong to them.
That is because our people consciously resisted a language that does not belong to them.
Never did, never will.
Never did and never will.
No matter how they try to run it down our throat, we ain't gonna have it.
No matter how they try to run it down our throat, we ain't never gonna have it.
We ain't gonna have it.
We ain't gonna have it.
You must understand that as a level of resistance.
You must understand this is a level of resistance.
Anybody can speak that simple whitey's language.
Anybody can speak that simple whitey's language.
Anybody can do it.
Anybody can do it.
We have not done it because we have resisted.
We have not done it because we have resisted.
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 We have to recognize who our major enemy is.
We have to recognize who our major enemy is.
Brother.
Our enemy is not our blood brother.
Flesh of our flesh and blood
Flesh
of
of
our blood.
our flesh of our flesh and blood of our blood.
The major enemy is whitey.
The major enemy is whitey.
Institutions of racism.
These institutions of racism.
That's the major enemy.
That's the major
That is
enemy.
the major enemy. And whenever anybody prepares for revolutionary warfare,
And whenever anybody prepares for revolutionary warfare,
concentrate on the major enemy.
we concentrate on the major
We're
enemy.
not strong enough to fight each other and also fight him.
We're not strong enough to fight each other and also fight
We
him.
will not fight each other today.
We will not fight each other
There will be
together.
no fights in the black community among black people.
There will be no fights in the black community among black people.
There will be just people who will be off.
There will be just people who will be off.
There will be no fights.
There will be no
There will
fights.
be no disruption.
There will be no
We're
disruptions.
going to be united.
We are going to be united.
For us, the question of community is a question of color in our people.
For us, the question of community is a question of color and our people.
Not geography, not land.
Not geography, not land.
Not land, not geography.
Not land, not
We have
geography.
no alternative but to fight whether we want to or not.
We have no alternative but to fight whether we want to or not.
On every level in this country, black man, black people have got to fight.
On every level in this country, black man, black people have to fight.
Got to fight.
Got to
Got
fight.
to fight.
They got to
One of
fight.
the ways of bringing our people home
One of the ways of bringing our people
by using patience.
is
love,
by
brotherhood,
using
and unity.
patience, love,
Brotherhood and unity.
brotherhood, and unity.
Not force.
Not force.
Love, patience, brotherhood, and unity.
Love, patience, brotherhood, and
We
unity.
try.
And we try.
And we try.
And we try. And we
If we
try.
become a threat, if If they become a threat.
If they become a threat.
We off them.
We off them.
We off them.
We off
We
them.
need each other.
We need each other.
Have each other.
We have to have each
For our
other.
survival.
For our survival.
We've got to have each
We've
other.
got to have each other. From the revolutionaries to the conservatives. A black united front is what we're about. A black united front is what we're about. We have been so colonized that we say we hate. And that is the best example of a person who says he's colonized.
Sit in your house.
You sit in your house.
Whitey comes into your house.
And Whitey comes into your house, beats you up, rapes your wife, beats up your child. And you don't have the humanity to say that I hate you. You don't have it. That is how dehumanized we are. We are so dehumanized that we can't say, yes, we hate you for what you've done to us. Can't say it. Can't say
It's not a
it.
question of right or left.
It's not a question of right or left.
It's a question of black.
It's a question of black.
Page 137.
Louder than that, even.
Page 42. Oh, Miss Kosigian and Miss Gromiko, I'll never be able to thank you enough. Won't you be my bridesmaids? Thank you, Miss Nasser. I'm afraid we can't accept, but I'm sure Miss Gromiko will be delighted.
Okay. All right.
Please let me introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around here for many a long, long year. So many a man's soul and faith. Yes, I was here when Jesus Christ had his moments of doubt and pain. I made damn sure that Pilate washed his hands and sealed his fate. Pleased to meet y'all.
I think the other thing you were doing, Bill, is better. Hey!
Oh, fucking hell. You gotta come on in that other bit, Charlie.
The first room was packed. The music was slow. The couples hardly moved. Johnny F. had disappeared. The people I saw were in all the stages of disarray, from nakedness to full evening dress. The band was playing softly. The striking thing about it was the singular lack of noise. Beyond, from time to time, through the marble doorway, I heard the muffled splash of someone diving into the pool. And this, too, was rather a soothing sound.
Try and make it a bit more life. It's a bit dead, you know? Not clipped enough somehow. Hey.
Please let me introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for many a long, long year. Stole many a man's soul and faith. Yes, I was round when Jesus Christ had his moments of doubt and pain. Made damn sure that Pilate washed his hands, sealed his fate. Nice to meet y'all. Hope you guess my name. Oh, music is the nature of my game. Yes, I hung around St. Petersburg when I saw it was a time to change. Killed the Tsar and his ministers while Anastasia screamed in vain. I rode a tank, held a general's rank when the blitzkriegs raged and the bodies stank. To meet y'all, I hope.
What they saw evidently reassured him, for some reason. I didn't want to disturb the rhythm of their lovemaking. In any case, although looking her in the eyes, I was by no means certain she saw me, for her eyes, though wide open, were staring almost glassy. The man began to lower himself towards her. She turned her head again away, bending her neck, looking now neither at me nor at him, but directly upwards. He came closer. He seemed for a moment to hesitate until his buttocks hard in a posture that pushed his member as far forward as it would go. While he knelt, he leaned over and almost fell on top of her body. One of her arms went round his neck, the other encircled his waist. He was in her, and her thighs in response came up, the bent knees dragging her calves after them to rest on the under part of her thighs. For some time, it seemed even several minutes, they lay in this attitude without stirring. He was the first to recover, slowly beginning to move his hips first from side to side, then out and in. His thrusts grew quicker. She began to assist them and moved her hand from round his waist to clench at his buttocks, dragging them onto her sex. Gripping her underneath, he held and raised her slightly from the rug as if speared. The frenzy began to invade them both. They began to sigh and shudder, tearing at each other with their hands. He lunged at her, till once again they froze, as earlier, yet this time she kept up a curious kind of writhing, as if reaching to him with her whole body.
Please let me introduce myself. Oh, I'm a man of wealth and taste. But haven't I been round for a minute? Oh, shit. Ah! Ah! Let me introduce myself. Well, ain't I a man of wealth and taste? I've been around here for a long, long year. Stole many a man's soul and faith. Yes, I was round when Jesus Christ had his moments of doubt and pain. Made damn sure the Pilate washed his hands and sealed his fate. Pleased to meet y'all. Hope you guess my name. But what's puzzling you is the nature of my game. Yeah, didn't I hang around St. Petersburg? I saw it was time for a change. I killed the Tsar and his ministers while Anastasia screamed in vain. Rode a tank, held a general's rank when the SS raved and the bodies stank. such glee while you're kings and queens of the tender cage for the gods they made. You shouted out to kill Kennedy when all the time I knew it's just you and me. So let me please introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I lay traps for troubadours who get killed before they reach Bombay. Pleased to meet y'all. Hope you guessed my name. I was fussing you, just the nature of the game. Hup, 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 get on down to it.
Allô? 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 Allô?
He doesn't want to answer?
No.
You're calling Leroy Jones?
Yes.
Or Cassius Clay?
Yes.
Or Rap Brown?
Yes.
Or Pierre Moulel?
Yes.
Or Stokely Carmichael?
Yes.
Or Eldridge Cleaver?
Yes.
Or Malcolm X?
Yes.
Or Patrice Lumumba?
Yes.
And he's not answering.
No.
Your first name, is it Ophelia?
No.
Cordella?
No.
Eve?
Yes.
And where were you born, in Stalingrad?
No.
Trafalgar?
No.
El Alamein?
No.
Budapest?
Yes.
And your surname, is it Republic?
No.
Totalitarianism?
No.
Liberalism?
No.
Trade unionism?
No.
Democracy?
Yes.
Do you feel exploited by the moment you step into an interview?
Yes.
Do you think there's a good way of conducting an interview?
No.
You think it's a matter of professional technique?
Yes.
Woman. If you feel so negative about being interviewed, but you consent to this one, perhaps it's because you feel the need of a psychic house cleaning.
Yes.
You have to go through your ideas in brutal form, so the brutal form might be the form of the interview.
Yes.
Not to spend your time thinking privately.
Yes.
You think culture is order?
Yes.
Just come round here a bit more, will you? Follow her closely.
Sure.
You were on marijuana, Benzedrine, sleeping pills for a few years. Yes. And you were addicted to Seconal too?
Yes.
A man of culture is as far from an artist as a historian is from a man of action.
Yes.
Do you think that drugs are a spiritual form of gambling?
Yes.
And do you think culture has lowered artistic creativity?
Yes.
Are drugs a poetic equation that can be carried right down to the end of its metaphor?
Yes.
Is it because the myth of culture is so well accredited that it always survives revolution?
Yes.
And marijuana does something for the sense of time.
Yes.
It accelerates it. It opens you to your unconscious.
Yes.
Just come here a little more. Just come around here. But on LSD, you begin to die a little. And that's the way you get this extraordinary sense of revelation. Perhaps you taste the order of your own death on such a trip.
Yes.
It is urgent to replace the word culture by another one.
Yes.
And maybe the devil is God in exile.
Yes.
Do you have a theory about who killed Kennedy?
No.
It is impossible for America to get out of Vietnam. Psychologically impossible.
Yes.
Americans, you think, really want to fight?
Yes.
They really want a war.
Yes.
They have there the biggest professional war game in the history of the world.
Yes.
And America is just doing there what they want to be doing. Some shooting, some war, all covered by color television.
Yes.
And there is only one way to be an intellectual revolutionary, and that is to give up being an intellectual.
Yes.
It would be almost necessary for them to build schools of deculturalization.
Yes.
Well, it'll take a long time.
Yes.
And to fulfill this progressive operation, the mind has a very hard task.
Yes.
Cut, just there a minute. Now just come here again. You boy, come round here. Okay, border. 12, take 4. Orgasm is the only moment when you can't cheat life.
Yes.
The Occident is fighting communism because the Occident is Faustian.
Yes.
And the tragic irony is that in fighting communism, we are creating the absolute equivalent of communism in our own society.
Yes.
And when sex becomes problematic, in walks a totalitarian.
Yes.
And the one thing you will have learned after all these years is not to make love when you don't really feel like it.
Yes.
When the novel is dead, then the technological society will be totally upon us.
Yes.
And do you think that a woman in the home today, do you think she is miserable?
Yes.
Do you think the lower classes have more sexual vitality than the upper classes?
Yes.
And members of the upper classes
John
tend to
Birch's
be
daughter
fond of their
strained
own
herself out and
perversion.
spread her legs for her master. In deep and firmly went Brezhnev's prick. And as
The
it sank
trouble with
deeply
the
into
lower
her,
classes,
John Birch's daughter
when
began to
they see
whip her
perversion
muscles
as a weakness.
up and back. Up and back shot the mighty prick into John
Yes?
Birch's daughter's distended cunt. Round and round whirled her ass. Up and back in conformity
Follow
to
me now,
Brezhnev's
dear.
post went her
Follow me
buttocks. Loose and tight went the
And do
tiny
you really
muscles of the
think
flaming cunny.
that when you said to be an intellectual revolutionary, the only way is to give up being an intellectual?
Yes, yes.
And you really mean
Yes,
it?
yes.
Page 19. Stalin came closer.
Okay, cut.
Soraya was trembling. She dared not meet his gaze. I'm leaving you, Joseph. Farewell. Hey, baby, you sound like somebody in a dime novel. You'll have me crying in a minute.
Been around here a long, long years. Stole me a man's soul and faith. I was round with Jesus Christ at his moment of doubt and pain. Me damn sure Pilate washed his hands, sealed his fate.
Do you want to do it like that, Keith? Do you want to have that gap? Do you want to have that gap, or do you want to leave it out?
No, it's right. It's just chant. Longer. Just sing it.
All right.
Yeah, that's all right. 1, 2. Let me introduce myself. I'm a man of well taste. I've been around for many a long, long year. Stole many a man's soul and faith. Yes, I was round with Jesus Christ at his moment of doubt and pain. Me damn sure Pilate washed his hands, sealed his fate. Pleased to meet you. I hope you guess my name. What's puzzling you? The nature of my game.
Page 41. When Brezhnev heard the two explosions, he smiled ironically. Well, Bobby, it worked. Frankie played his part to perfection. You were right about Sinatra. He's just the man we need. Page 42. Suddenly the door opened.
Pleased to meet
He shot at the ceiling, Mr. Brezhnev.
Hope you
Disappointment
guess
this time.
my name. What's puzzling you is the nature of my game. Yes, I'm a perfectly of a tender case with the gods in me. Shouted out to kill Kennedy when all the time it was only me. Won't you let me introduce myself? Yeah.
I'll just keep your revolver.
Man, well,
But Brezhnev pressed a button in the wall. Follow him, I'll give the alarm. And 2 months later, a rifle was aimed at Douglas Bravo's back.
It was a time for change. Killed the Tsar and his ministers. Wild Anastasia screamed of age. I rode a tank, I hear the general's rank. When I'm blitzkrieg red and the body stank. Showed us. Pleased to meet y'all now. Hope you guess my name. But what's so puzzling is just the nature of no puzzling. It's just the nature of the game. Yeah, yeah, it's all right. Oh, Jimmy. Okay, yeah, we'll try for a groove.
I'm happy with that one.
You want to do another one?
Okay, we're just making one little correction.
Nice, yeah? Nice. Ça va. What was that other beat we were doing? That before, what was that?
What, last time?
The time, the rehearsal before, what was that beat that we were doing? What was that all about? Yeah, what was that? It's something completely different. Are you ready? I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm ready.
Okay.
Put Nicky on the cans a bit.
I got no expectation.
Cheers.
Okay.
Okay.
Play a bit, Nick. See if they can hear it. Right. 3. Right.
Sympathy. Hot one. Rocky, start it.
4. Right.
4.
If you don't answer next time, he'll come and kill you.
When nations are fighting for their existence on this earth, when the question of to be or not to be has to be answered, then all humane and aesthetic considerations must be set aside. For these ideals do not exist of themselves somewhere in the air, but are the product of man's creative imagination and disappear when he disappears. Nature knows nothing of them. Moreover, they are characteristic of only a small number of nations, or rather of races, and their value depends on the measure in which they spring from the racial feeling of the latter. Humane and aesthetic ideals will disappear from the inhabited earth, and those races disappear which are the creators and standard bearers of them.
Stuck around here.
Propaganda must express itself in broad masses. For the intellectual classes, what we call the intellectual classes today, propaganda is not suited, but only scientific exposition. Propaganda has as little to do with science as an advertisement poster has to do with art. Jackie.
Peace in Vietnam.
As far as concerns the form in which it presents its message. The art of the advertisement poster consists in the ability of the designer to attract the attention of the crowd through the form and colors he chooses.
Page 99. The Maoists who were staying in the room next to Foster Dulles stared in amazement at the stunning apparition, then went into a whispered huddle. Foster Dulles went inside to order Princess Beatrice a Molotov cocktail. When it was served, she drank it down in one gulp. Dulles had the impression that her huge pupils grew even larger. She remained silent for a moment, staring into space. Then, almost without moving her lips, she said, "I came to invite you." "Invite me?" "We're giving a buffet supper tonight. There'll be around 20 guests. My mother said I could invite you. You are American, aren't you?" Foster Dulles was tempted to lie, but that would have been dangerous. "No, I'm Russian." Princess Beatrice shrugged her slim shoulders. "When you've been here 3 or 4 months, you'll feel like dying. You'll want to do anything at all. Drink, scream, sleep, anything not to think." But I won't be here that long, said Foster Dulles. I told you I was on holiday.
Conduct are ruled by sentiment rather than by sober reasoning. This sentiment, however, is not complex, but simple and consistent. It is not highly differentiated, but has only the negative and positive notions of love and hatred, right and wrong, truth and falsehoods. Jackie. Its notions are never partly this and partly that. English propaganda especially understood this in a marvelous way and put what they understood into practice. Only the born weakling can look upon this principle as cruel. And if he does so, it is merely because he is of a feebler nature and narrower mind. For if such a law did not direct the process of evolution, then the higher development of organic life would not be conceivable at all. All the great civilizations of the past became decadent because the originally created race died out as a result of contamination of the blood. The most profound cause of such decline is to be found in the fact that the people ignored the principle that all culture depends on men and not the reverse. In other words, in order to preserve a certain culture, the type of manhood that creates such a culture must be preserved. But such a preservation goes hand in hand with the inexorable law that it is the strongest and the best who must triumph, and they have the right to endure.
Page 137.
The progress of mankind...
Liu Chaoshi got back into his Falcon. 100 yards further on, 52nd Street came to a dead end overlooking East River Drive. The two levels were connected by a flight of stone steps. This was a fashionable neighborhood. Sutton Place was only a few blocks away. Liu parked the Falcon and walked back the way he had come. He turned in at the entrance to number 425. It was the kind of New York apartment house where they won't let you up unless they know you. The tenants pay a king's ransom to be guarded day and night. No vacuum cleaner salesman or panhandlers
the
allowed.
higher level without first having climbed the lower rung. The Aryan, therefore, had to take that road which his sense of reality pointed out to him, and not that which the modern pacifist dreams of. The path of reality is, however, difficult and hard to tread. Yet, It is the only one which finally leads to the goal where the others envisage mankind in their dreams. But the real dream is that those dreamers help only to lead man away from his goal rather than towards it. It was not by mere chance that the first forms of civilization arose where the Aryan came into contact with inferior races, subjugated them, and forced them to obey his command. The members of the inferior race became the first mechanical tools in the service of a growing civilization. All the parties that profess so-called bourgeois principles look upon political life as in reality a struggle for seats in parliament. The moment their principles and convictions are of no further use in that struggle, they are thrown overboard as if they were sand ballast. And the programs are constructed in such a way that they can be dealt with in like manner. But such practice has a correspondingly weakening effect on the strength of those parties. They lack the great magnetic force which alone attracts the broad masses. For these masses always respond to the compelling force which emanates from absolute faith in the ideas put forward, combined with an indomitable zest to fight for and defend them. By helping to lift the human being above the level of mere animal existence, faith really contributes to... Jackie. Faith really contributes to consolidate and safeguard its own existence. Taking humanity as it exists today and taking into consideration the fact that the religious beliefs which it generally holds and which have been consolidated through our education so that they serve as moral standards in practical life, if we should now abolish religious teaching and not replace it by anything of equal value, the result would be that the foundations of human existence would be seriously shaken. We may safely say that man does not live merely to serve higher ideals, but that these ideals in their turn furnish the necessary conditions of his existence as a human being. And thus the circle is closed. It must not be forgotten that nothing really great in this world has a... Jackie.
Victory to the NLF.
The rights of citizenship shall be conferred on every young man whose health and character have been certified as good. This act of inauguration in citizenship shall be a solemn ceremony, and the diploma conferring the rights of citizenship will be preserved by the young man as the most precious testimonial of his whole life. It entitles him to exercise all the rights of a citizen and to enjoy all the privileges attached thereto. For the state must draw a sharp line of distinction between those who, as members of the nation, are the foundation and the support of its existence and greatness, and those who are domiciled in the state simply as earners of their livelihood there. It must never be forgotten that nothing really great in this world has ever been achieved through coalitions, but that such achievements have always been due to the triumph of the individual.
happened incredibly fast. I choked back a shout, then I was my partner. Quick, Kosygin, look. He had long been accustomed to regaining consciousness with all his faculties in a tenth of a second. Well, what do you know about that? Then he fell silent. Victoria had retreated until she had her back to a kind of metal cupboard. She was watching the intruders with utter calm. She did not make the slightest outcry. And yet the three boys were all holding stubby, dangerous-looking weapons. Not a word was spoken. I saw the weapons spit tiny blue flames. I shut my eyes and cried out, "They're going to kill her!" An instant later, I heard Kosygin saying, "Look at that!" I opened my eyes. I expected to see Victoria lying on the floor, but she was still standing with her back to the cupboard, a faint smile on her pale blue lips. "How extraordinary," said Kosygin. The three boys looked surprised. They glanced at one another, parted their weapons, and started towards the young hippie. "They'll get her eventually," I said. "We've got to help them. Let's not get involved, said Kosygin. It'll be too late anyway. Let's just watch." The assailants moved slowly. She had a weapon in her. She must have realized that she couldn't possibly reach it in time. But perhaps she didn't even have one. My throat was tight with excitement and fear, for I was afraid of Victoria. One of the boys ran to seize her arm. What happened next was incredibly fast. The girl leaned forward and, clamping a mysterious hold over a huge opponent, levered him over her shoulder and sent him crashing against the wall. Next, she sprang like a cat onto the table, then to the top of the cupboard, and from there she leaped down on another boy, swinging both arms and legs. There was a hoarse cry, and the second attacker sank on the floor with his froggy head lying at such an odd angle. It was obvious his neck was broken. The smallest of the three boys now seemed to waver. He stepped back and threw a short dagger, but already Victoria was on him. She seized him by the knife wrist, twirled him about like a toy balloon, and threw him against a corner of the table. He stood on the floor like a broken block and lay motionless, apparently dead. We had watched this extraordinary scene with bated breath. Victoria looked less winded than we were. But I'd never seen anything like that. I'd take my hat off to that girl. In fact, she was more than terrific. The young lady went over to look at the smashed door, which must have been one of the inner doors of her apartment. Then she examined the bodies who were strewn about the floor. Bending over them, she said, then she took a small round object out of the chest, raised it to her lips, and spoke briefly. "Come quickly, bring the circle." She was calling for someone. Then she sat in an armchair and remained perfectly still, staring into space. A minute later, two hippies, a man and a woman, came into the room. They both belonged to the little troupe of acrobats. The man whistled in admiration. "Nice work," he said. "I suppose they wanted the papers you took from them." "I suppose so." "Are they dead?" "Yes, it couldn't be helped. If there had only been two of them, or if I'd known they were so clumsy, I could have spared them. But obviously they meant to kill me." "All right. Do we operate now?" "We operate." The man opened a small satchel. He took out a kind of shining carpet which he spread on the floor, and then an apparatus that looked something like a vacuum cleaner. In a way, that was what it was, but of a very special sort. With the help of the woman accompanying him, he placed one of the bodies on the shining carpet, pointed the tube with a kind of funnel again towards the body, and turned on the apparatus. The body was sucked into the funnel as if it had been turned to liquid or gas. In a little over a minute, nothing was left of it. The other two bodies were given the same treatment. The hippie looked around the room. "Any other damage?" he asked. "The door." "Oh, of course. I'll be back in 10 minutes. He folded the shining carpet and put it back in the satchel along with the apparatus. Then he and the woman left. "They certainly are well equipped," Kosygin said to me. "We don't have anything like that disintegrating vacuum cleaner. It does a neat, clean job. It must be damn useful in cases like that. I'm going to turn in a report on it." I was still fairly shaken by what I had just seen, and overjoyed that Victoria was safe and sound. "What do you think of all that?" I asked. "I think my hunch was right. Your hippie girlfriend is a fellow agent. But what a girl! If she's a beginner, she's got what it takes. Did you see the way she took care of those three gorillas? She's an acrobat. She must have muscles of steel." "Yes, but that wouldn't have been enough to get her out of that jam if she weren't also an expert in some very special kind of lethal fighting technique. You and I know all the methods of unarmed combat, from ancient judo and karate to modern napalm. Yet I had no idea what she was doing in there. And what about the way she neutralized those laser pistols? Obviously, she set up a force screen between them and her, and a damn powerful one. But how did she do it? She didn't have anything in her hands. I'd also like to know more about those papers she stole from the Borleys. However, I doubt they're the ones that were signed in our presence. Tchaikovsky must have taken those with him." On our video screen, Victoria was still sitting like a statue. Her face was a perfect blank. What a strange girl. Kosygin was gazing at her with evident respect. Page 287. I sat down next to the woman who made no sign as before. I took the cigarette from her fingers and stuck it between her lips. Pushing her forward, I leaned over behind her and undid the buttons descending the length of her back and over her rump. I slid the dress off. There wasn't anything underneath. She seemed vaguely to sense that something was happening, and bending her head over her now naked breasts, drew her arms off the table. Her breasts heavy, prominent, and the nipples soft. I ran my hands over her waist, along her thighs, and finally buried them in the soft flesh under the fur. Unresponsive until now, she began to rock from side to side. Somewhere in her was a faint, wakeful gleam of consciousness. I picked her up and laid her on the table, her legs sagging over the edge. I said, "Come on, we're going for a walk." I carried her through the Marxist archway and across the marble floor. There was no one in the swimming pool. The sounds of the room were deadened in the air and seemed to come from a distance.
Like that.
The band
Just the one, it'll be cool.
very slowly.
A bit more of the...
Went my band in it.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. Hung around for a long, long years. I've stole many a man's soul of faith. I was around when Jesus Christ had his moments of doubt and pain. Made damn sure that Pilate washed his hands, sealed his fate.
No, I know, but I just don't. I don't have to be singing double time because the bass isn't playing it, but the rhythm's still playing it.
Yeah, but it sounds nice if you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that first verse should be quite close to the way you were singing at the end of the night.
Yeah. Okay.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. So I was around when Jesus Christ had his moments down the plain. They damn sure that fire washed his hands. Feel free. That's mine. I puzzle you with the nature of my dream. I throw it with the time to the train. Took the Lord and his ministers, Anastasia screamed in vain. I rode a tank, held a generous rank, when the blitzkrieg raged and the bodies lay. Pleased to meet you all. Hope you get my name. Yeah. I watch puzzling you. It's just the nature of my game. Yeah. I watch you gleam while your kings and queens fall for pretend decay for the God family. I'm trying to out who kill the Kennedys when after all it was you and me. So please let me introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I lay traps for troubadours who get killed before they reach Bombay. Pleased to meet y'all now. Hope you guess my name. Yeah. Oh, what's puzzling you is the nature of my game. Yeah. Boom, boom, get down. Yeah.
Hi, brother.
Hi, baby. How you doing?
I'm here from Panther to ask you a few questions.
Groovy. Talk it to me, honey. Tell me what it's like.
Looking at today's revolution, what do you think is the first step?
The revolutionary must realize that the black revolution has begun without waiting for the day in which the white worker will reconceive his ideas about the black man.
What is the link between communism and black power?
Same old question. The existence of black power is asking a similar question to the one who opposed Stalin to Mao.
Who do you think will lead a revolution?
The question that faces the world is whether the black man's going to go out and lead the revolution, or is he going to wait for the white worker to do so?
What is important then, town or country?
75% of black people are concentrated in ghettos, which are in cities. That's where the problem is. Towns are extremely important.
What is the attitude of the progressives?
The progressives. They seem to be stunned by black power. It's simply because they haven't examined the historical situation that they are placed in. For example, Marx did, when he examined the oppression of the workers through the capitalists and the imperialists.
Are black people becoming revolutionaries?
Yeah, baby. Though they have been the wretched of the earth, black people are becoming revolutionaries. They are becoming aware that it is not the ethnic differences that is fundamentally the basis.
All the stores.
All the stores.
Will open. All the stores.
Will open. All the
Will
stores.
open. If you.
All the stores.
Will open.
If you. Will open. If you.
Will say.
Will open.
If you. Will say. The magic
Will
word.
say.
Will say.
Magic word.
Will say.
The magic word.
The magic
word.
words. The magic words.
The magic words. The magic words. The magic words. The magic words. Up against. Up against. Up against. Up against. The wall. Up against. The wall. The wall. The wall. Mother. 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 Fucker. 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 This is sticker. This is a sticker. This is a sticker.
Action.
This is a sticker. This is a
Smash the windows. Daytime. Anytime. Together. Let's smash the windows. Drag the ship. From in here. No money done. No time to pay. Just take what you want. The magic dance. In the street. Run up and down. Down street. Niggas. Take the shit you want. Take their lives. If need be. But get what you want. What you need. Dance up and down the street. Turn the music up. Run through the streets. Music. Beautiful radios. The market streets. They are brought here especially for you.
No. He doesn't want to talk to you. What? Yes, that's... Look, I am deaf or something. I said he doesn't want to talk to you.
up, brother, hurry up! You've got work to do. Take their lives.
Take their lives.
Take their lives.
It may be.
It may be.
It may be what you want.
Get what you want.
Everything you want. Take what you want.
Everything you want. Everything you want. Everything you want. Everything you want. Kill them. Kill them. Kill them. Kill them. Kill them. Don't forget. Kill them. Shoot them. Shoot them. Don't forget. Don't forget. Don't forget. Don't down. Don't forget. Run up and down. Run up and down. Run up and down. Run up and down. In the street. In the street. In the street. In the street. At night. At night. At night. At night. At night. At day. Dance up. Dance up. Dance up.
We must make our own world. Brothers, we must make our own world.
Black people, though
It's a
they
new
have been
world.
wretched of the world, are becoming budding revolutionaries. They are becoming aware
And
that
we
their
cannot do this
underdevelopment is not
unless
due
the
to
white
any
man
ethnic differences,
It's been killed.
but simply because imperialism
Let's
has
make a
enslaved them
world.
economically.
There's rumor of a division. Is it true?
We
In
want
every
black children
movement,
to grow up
there is
and
division.
learn.
Unfortunately with us, there's a slight division
When they grow up, look
based
in the face
on the
and call
integrationalists
Sympathy
and
or
the
Goddard's
activists,
face.
the realists.
What
No!
causes this
We
division?
must let them children grow up and call you the Goddard's face. You must remember.
It is this similar to the one caused in the 20s between the Bolshevik and the Bolshevik people.
Can you elaborate?
Brothers,
Yes,
remember.
the romantic integrationalists feels by speaking to the black people, they will revolt spontaneously. Whereas the activist believes that if you communicate with the people, talk with them, learn with them, and encourage and devise new methods of obtaining freedom, is a real way to look at things.
What is the objective of black power?
The taking of political power.
Why political power?
Political power because the political power has to decide the true economic concept that will suit the black people.
Aren't you afraid of defeat?
No. One must be aware of defeat, but one must also be strongly convinced that in the end, victory is inevitable.
If you say
Page
so.
74.
It is very important
Ah!
because black
Please,
people have
Captain
been
Rockefeller, don't shoot those people
very
just because they haven't got any
subtly
money. Be
inculcated
quiet. These matters are no
into
concern of yours.
the whole
But what's going on? This is what's going on. I'm Castro the Rebel, and I'm here to put a stop to this disgusting sequence. Castro the Rebel, I've caught you at last. We'll see about that. Hey, you, hand me that Tommy gun. It's Castro, seize him. Easier said than done, Captain Rockefeller. I'm going to... Ah! Rush him all at once. We'll get it.
Extremely
You can always try. Ah! Curse it.
Next important step.
The next important steps are to reinstate new national and international relations.
And what
How
about
to
peace?
deal with industry. How we're going to conquer industry, conquer new armies. In what towns, in what cities are going to be our first army bases. And what is even more important, we must be aware of the so-called friend who in the end is the enemy.
And what about peace?
For no peace, no organization can possibly try to put forward these plans successfully unless they do it without any publicity, if possible, none at all. Peace is the language of the integrationalists, but there can be no peace. No peace until the black people of the world are free.
Does freedom means unity of black people?
Freedom means unity of the black mind, the coordination of black thought and black work
But how can we relate this to the white man?
Creates a slightly difficult problem because although he never learned to speak our language, we learned his. But when he left, he took the dictionaries with him. Although we speak the same words, we are speaking two completely different languages. And unfortunately, we have to get some way to break down this communication barrier, or else we will never be able to talk to him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sisters. That's
Thank
a
you,
deal, baby.
brother.
Knock me out.
There's not going to be any separation. This sort of gets repeated almost again, except with drums, but the guitar part gets almost done again.
It's straight. We get,
So you've got that. You've got like Jumping Jack Flash. You've got that track underneath which you can't actually hear, but which is there.
But that's going to be more than that.
Yeah,
but
this is going to be like even more slower.
So you want to stay exactly where you are now? You don't want to move?
Well, we will move. Yeah, slightly. We're not too far.
But this goes under. This will be going in the other, like the song and the intro and middle later.
Bill playing that?
Best way to play it.
No, I think Bill's playing bass. You can play separation.
Made out of the order of Miss Hinton, but I'm going to write in full settlement on the back. Okay, I said, I'll give it to her. If she cashes it, you'll be quits. If she sends it back to you, you'll know she wants more. She won't get another penny out of me. You have a telephone? I inquired while he was signing the check. Yes, but it's an unlisted number. Then write it on the back. He did so and handed me the check. I put it in my pocket and turned to Disney. What are you doing here, Walt? I just wanted to make sure you weren't getting into more trouble. I didn't notice you tailing me. You didn't notice me because I wasn't doing it. We had a helicopter on the job. McNamara's eyes popped. He couldn't believe his ears. Who the hell is this guy, he asked Disney. He told you, answered the policeman. His name is King Kong, he's a private detective, and he's the cleverest little bastard I know. With this parting shot, General Walt Disney went back to his car.
When the body hey. I was in you is the nature of my name. Oh, yes. I want to be like me. Pretend again for the God's baby. I'm standing out, feel the vanity. When after all, it was you and me. Let me that taste. Father. Said you in the nature of my name. I know what. Crinkly. Track. Come on.
Page 49, Prince Constantine. Page 128, Elvis Presley. Page 52, Hassan II. Page 28, Tarzan the Ape Man. Page 72, Doris Day.
Take one.
All at once I was fed up with that Western political novel. I looked at my watch. I'd only managed to kill an hour and a half. I raised the lid, climbed out, and threw the book into the Kazi. This was all a waste of time. I would soon be 5 years old, the age of the Red Guards, the age of the Revolution. I had to do something. I sent a wire to Peking. Now I was on the beach, waiting for Uncle Mao's yellow submarine to come and get me. Nearby, there were a lot of fools running around making noise. Who were they? Why were they there to be running around like that? In my opinion, they must have been making a film. Yes, it was all a waste of time. I've got to do something. Got to get away from this mess. So long. Talk away.